Today is World Invocation Day, a day when millions of people throughout the world are joining together to say the great invocation, a prayer which belongs to no group or individual, but to men and women of goodwill everywhere. The Sunday editor of the New York Times has said, "We need, in addition to the A-bomb and the H-bomb, what I call the S-bomb, the spiritual bomb." You are invited to share in the meditation of the great invocation as it is repeated by an outstanding American, Mrs. Franklin D. Roosevelt.
This is Mrs. Franklin D. Roosevelt speaking from New York within the United Nations building. We're living today in a troubled world. In many parts of the world, people have a sense of discouragement as to whether they will ever solve their difficulties. And it seems to me that those of us who feel that a spiritual leadership is necessary in the world are looking for ways in which to express what we feel. And someone sent me the other day an invocation. It is called the Great Invocation. And it seems to me to express the aspirations held by many people throughout the world, so I'm going to read it to you on this program. The Great Invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the Master knows and serves. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth.
From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May the Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth.
I'm very glad to be able to take part in this celebration in St. Louis on Human Rights Day. Ever since the Declaration of Human Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, was passed in Paris in 1948 on December the 10th, we have fostered the observance of this day not only in the United States, but throughout the world. The object is to make people everywhere conscious of the importance of human rights and freedoms. The reason for that is that these are spoken of and emphasized in the Charter of the United Nations, and the Declaration was written to elaborate the rights already mentioned in the Charter, and to emphasize also for all of us the fact that the building of human rights would be one of the foundation stones on which we would build in the world an atmosphere in which peace could grow. For that reason, all over the world, we've encouraged the associations for the United Nations to observe a whole week before United Nations Day comes around to explain United Nations and what goes on in that organization. And when we come to the celebration for human rights, we try to particularly have people study the Declaration so that they will really understand what were considered to be the most essential rights for all people to have throughout the world. They fall into different groups, and one reason that we are now considering the writing of a covenant or covenants is because we feel that these rights should sometime be actually written into the laws of countries throughout the world. And that can be done by the adoption of covenants and the changing of laws to meet whatever a country has accepted in a covenant which will be written in treaty form. These things must be well understood, because even though you accept treaties and countries ratify those treaties, the real change which must give to people throughout the world their human rights must come about in the hearts of people. We must want our fellow human beings to have rights and freedoms which give them dignity and which will give them a sense that they are human beings that can walk the earth with their heads high and look all men in the face. If we observe these rights for ourselves and for others, I think we will find that it is easier in the world to build peace, because war destroys all human rights and freedoms. So in fighting for those, we fight for peace.
Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt was certainly the best-known woman in the world. She first became known, like Queen Elizabeth, through her position. She presided over the life of the White House longer than any woman in American history, and she did so with both distinction and vigor. But Mrs. Roosevelt came to be associated with more than being the wife of a president. She was an eminent and preeminent humanist. Her duties in the United Nations, particularly in furthering human rights, and her tireless travels, writings, and interests have won her worldwide esteem and affection. Mrs. Roosevelt.
The beliefs we hold and the way we live by them seem to me very difficult to put into words. I grew up in a family where certain old-time religious practices were observed. Nobody talked about it, but my grandmother never allowed any child to go to bed without kneeling down and saying their prayers, and we were expected to do the same thing in the morning. Thus we unconsciously absorbed the idea that prayer was of use in daily life, and that you must believe in a strength that was greater than your own in the universe, and which could come through prayer to aid you in your weakness. My grandmother, who brought us up, had very simple religious beliefs. The words of the Bible were sacred, and she never questioned either what was put down in the Old Testament or what was in the New Testament. We children were expected to take everything for granted, just as she did. As I grew older, I began to question certain things, and when I had children of my own, I was seriously troubled as to what I had a right to teach them as being absolutely certain truths. My husband was also, in spiritual and religious matters, a very simple person, answered my anxieties on this subject by saying, it never hurt us to be taught to read and accept what was in the Bible, and why not let the children be taught in the same way? He said when they grew up they would think things out for themselves. I decided that thinking things out was part of the process of growing up, and the only way in which you could make sure of what you did believe. And having made sure, then you must try to live it. This life always seems to me to be a continuing process of education and development. What we are preparing for, none of us can be sure, but that we must do our best while we are here and develop all our capacities is absolutely certain. Just what form the future life takes does not really matter to me. I'm willing to leave that in the hands of God. We face whatever we have to face in this life, and if we do it bravely and sincerely, we are probably accomplishing that growth which we were put here to accomplish. I feel the same way about the future. That is in the hands of God. If we have done our best here, we will probably be permitted to do our best in whichever way we can in the future.
Today is World Invocation Day, a day when millions of people throughout the world are joining together to say the great invocation, a prayer which belongs to no group or individual, but to men and women of goodwill everywhere. The Sunday editor of the New York Times has said, we need, in addition to the A-bomb and the H-bomb, what I call the S-bomb, the spiritual bomb. You are invited to share in the meditation of the great invocation as it is repeated by an outstanding American, Mrs. Franklin D. Roosevelt.
This is Mrs. Franklin D. Roosevelt speaking from New York within the United Nations building. We're living today in a troubled world. In many parts of the world, people have a sense of discouragement as to whether they will ever solve their difficulties. And it seems to me that those of us who feel that a spiritual leadership is necessary in the world are looking for ways in which to express what we feel. And someone sent me the other day an invocation. It is called the Great Invocation. And it seems to me to express the aspirations held by many people throughout the world, so I'm going to read it to you on this program. The Great Invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the Master knows and serves. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and hope restore the plan on earth.
First and foremost, there must be recognition of the fact of God. That central reality can be called by any name that man may choose, according to his mental or emotional bent, racial tradition and heritage, for it cannot be defined or conditioned by names. Human beings, perforce, always use names in order to express that which they sense, feel, and know, both of the phenomenal and also of the intangible. Consciously or unconsciously, all men recognize God transcendent and God immanent. They sense God to be the creator and the inspiration of all that is. The Eastern faiths have ever emphasized God immanent deep within the human heart, nearer than hands and feet, the self, the one, the Atma, smaller than the small, yet all comprehensive. The Western faiths have presented God transcendent, outside his universe, an onlooker. Today we should have the churches presenting a synthesis of these two ideas, which have been summed up for us in the statement of Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Having pervaded this whole universe with a fragment of myself, I remain. The second truth to which all give allegiance, no matter what the faith, is that of man's essential relationship to God. Inherent in the human consciousness, inchoate often and undefined, is a sense of divinity. We are all the children of God. One is our Father, even God, says the Christ, and so say all the world teachers and avatars down the ages. As he is, so are we in this world, is another biblical statement. Closer is he than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, chants the Hindu. Christ in us, the hope of glory, is the triumphant affirmation of St. Paul. The spirit in man is undying. It forever endures, progressing from point to point and stage to stage upon the path of evolution, unfolding steadily and sequentially the divine attributes and aspects. This truth involves necessarily the recognition of two great natural laws, the law of rebirth and the law of cause and effect. The churches in the West have refused officially to recognize the law of rebirth, and have thereby wandered into a theological impasse and into a cul-de-sac from which there is no possible exit. The churches in the East have overemphasized these laws, so that a negative, acquiescent attitude to life and its processes, based on continuously renewed opportunity, controls the people. Christianity has emphasized immortality, but has made eternal happiness dependent upon the acceptance of a theological dogma. Be a true professing Christian and live in a somewhat fatuous heaven, or refuse to be an accepting Christian and go to an impossible hell, a hell growing out of the theology of the Old Testament and its presentation of a God full of hate and jealousy. Both concepts are today repudiated by all sane, sincere, thinking people. No one of any true reasoning power, or with any true belief in a God of love, accepts the heaven of the churchmen or has any desire to go there. Still less do they accept the lake that burneth with fire and brimstone, or the everlasting torture to which a God of love is supposed to condemn all who do not believe in the theological interpretations of the Middle Ages, of the modern fundamentalists, or of the unreasoning churchmen who seek through doctrine, fear, and threat to keep people in line with the obsolete old teaching. The essential truth lies elsewhere. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap, is a truth which needs re-emphasizing. In these words, St. Paul phrases for us the ancient and true teaching of the law of cause and effect, called in the Orient the have emphasized and exploited the extraterritoriality of deity and have posited the presence of a God who is creating, sustaining, and creatively active, but at the same time outside his creation, an inscrutable onlooker. This type of transcendent creator must be shown to be false, and this doctrine must be countered by the manifestation of God in man, the hope of glory. There does exist a close relationship between God transcendent, and in him we live and move and have our being, because having pervaded this entire universe with a fragment of himself, he remains. God is immanent in the forms of all created things. The glory which shall be revealed is the expression of that innate divinity in all its attributes and aspects, its qualities and powers, through the medium of humanity. On the fact of God and of man's relation to the divine, on the fact of immortality and of the continuity of divine revelation, and upon the fact of the constant emergence of messengers from the divine center, the New World religion will be based. To these facts must be added man's assured, instinctive knowledge of the existence of the path to God and of his ability to tread it, when the evolutionary process has brought him to the point of a fresh orientation to divinity, and to the acceptance of the fact of God transcendent and of God immanent within every form of life. These are the foundational truths upon which the world religion of the future will rest. Its keynote will be divine approach. Draw near to him, and he will draw near to you, is the great injunction. The age-old method of arriving at truth by the process of accepting new authorities and comparing them with previously established doctrines, while of undoubted value in the training of the mind, is gradually being transcended. In its place is emerging in both the religious and philosophical worlds a new capacity to take a more scientific position. Spiritual teaching will be increasingly accepted as an hypothesis to be proved, less by scholasticism, historical foundation, and authority, and more by the results of its effect upon the life lived and its practical usefulness in solving the problems of humanity. May the holy ones whose pupils we aspire to become show us the light we seek, give us the strong aid of their compassion and their wisdom. There is a peace that passeth all understanding. It abides in the hearts of those who live in the eternal. There is a power that maketh all things new. It lives and moves in those who know the self as one. May that peace brood over us, that power uplift us, till we stand where the one initiator is invoked, till we see his star shine forth. May the peace and the blessing of the holy ones pour forth over the worlds. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men, let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May the Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth.